Do you ever feel like nobody understands you? Like all your words get bent around so others think you're nuts? Well, there's a man in history who knew that emotion better than virtually anybody. His name was Friedrich Nietzsche, and his life was a giant jumble of misery, bewilderment, and total misunderstanding. But the thing is, he went through all that anguish and still wanted to help others find their way. So let me tell you his real tale. It's not a joyful fairy tale. In fact, it may be one of the saddest lives I ever read about, but there is something which makes me want to tell it regardless. Well, let's go. So back to our topic. The story begins in a small village in Prussia, now part of Germany. They had a baby boy. They called him Nietzsche. They called him Friedrich Wilhelm after the king of Prussia. His father was the minister of the local church, and the family was simple but very religious. 2 years later, Friedrich gained a baby sister, Elizabeth, and then a newborn brother, Ludwig. Life was great. Then something awful happened. Dad suffered a bad brain sickness. It gave him a lot of suffering. He couldn't do nothing no longer. Watching his father break apart like that was so frightening to a 4-year-old. And tragically, the agony wasn't going away anytime soon, because his dad died shortly after. Then his little brother, only 2 years old, died also, and just like that, dead, both of them. This ain't no fairy tale, child. It is real life. Watching his father and infant brother die within the space of a few months really shook Friedrich up. At school, others thought he seemed heartless and far too grown up for his age. That's what happens to a kid when they go through something like that bad. But at least he had his friends, eh? No. He had to go live far away with his dad's family. Now you'd think things couldn't get any worse, but no one knew how to help a hurt kid back then. They basically tell you to toughen up. Luckily, these days, we have better ways to carry the enormous weight of life. One of these, a website called Ground News, is sponsoring this segment. People will tell you all kinds of things and fill your head with lies if you don't ask them for proof, so doing your own research is smart. Ground News compiles news stories from all across the world and tells you who wrote them, their political bias, and who controls the company. You know exactly what you're reading. For example, if you want to read about less people coming to church in America, Ground News will display you many different items. And you can see that most of those items are from right-wing news, so maybe you're missing out on what the other side believes. If you find that useful, check them out using the link in the description. You can obtain their comprehensive plan at a great value. When his father and his younger brother died, the family moved to a city called Naumburg. They stayed with his dad's sisters. Despite everything that had transpired, most of which tiny Friedrich didn't even understand, he still attempted to stay positive. He worked hard in grade school to make him and his mom feel proud. And he did. He studied Christianity and attended a Christian high school. He graduated, but not with such good grades by then. It seemed like he was going to follow in his dad's footsteps. So he went to the University of Bonn to study theology. It was good at first, but then it went downhill quickly. His demeanor did not mesh at all with his two key teachers, and they even had big arguments with him, nor his social life. Remember, he was the only man in the home now. He had to look out for his mum and sister. He didn't get the chance to recuperate from the tragedy of his past, which made him feel like an outsider. He tried 2 semesters to fit in, even tried making music. But he was really, really terrible at it. Then he thought, you know what? I'm not happy here, so he departed. It was during this period that Friedrich started to doubt his Christian beliefs. When life just keeps kicking you down and every time you get back up, you get kicked straight back down again, you wonder what's the point of it all. Why do all this work if I'm just going to be hurt again? There are various answers. A romantic might say love. A drug addict might say drugs. A religious individual might mention God. But what if God no longer feels like an answer? I won't quit, since quitting would mean quitting life. You just have to find something else to cling on to. And it was just where Friedrich was. Is there some other reason for all this pain? He didn't know. When he contacted his mum and sister for aid, they got upset at him for quitting his expensive studies and for questioning his beliefs. And that was the time that his family relationship went downhill. But remember his sister Elizabeth, she would come back to haunt him later, even after death. Anyway, Friedrich was more bewildered as ever. But he realized that he needed a new start. So he moved to philology, the study of ancient languages, and proceeded to the University of Leipzig. Life was beginning to improve a little there. He made some acquaintances and got along with some of the teachers, but he was never lucky with girls, although he was truly after love. His belief in Christianity continued to wane as the years rolled by. We may say by this time that he had strayed away from God. Abandoning your religion in the 1800s was not very widespread, but it wasn't utterly unique either. The scientific revolution and the Enlightenment had been underway for some time. But it was still a very hard option to make if you lived in an extremely religious country like Germany. All right, pop quiz. What do you do when you throw off everything you were raised to think is the only truth and you aren't lucky with ladies either? We're gonna have some bad luck. That's right. I don't know whether Friedrich just had bad luck or God was exacting revenge, but he caught syphilis practically soon, which made him physically weak for the rest of his life. At least take some protection, guy. But that didn't stop him from studying hard. With a love of languages and several glasses of milk, he became the best of his class. That won him a university post at another university in a city named Basel. But he was actually incredibly brilliant at teaching. His courses were well, and he took a particular interest in each of his students. He also volunteered at the local hospital in his spare time. What a good fellow. He lived happily ever after, didn't he? No. He got dysentery aiding the sick without protecting himself. Not only would he never be able to do the job he loved again, but he would have health problems for the rest of his life that never got better. Bro, I told ya. Friedrich fought so hard to continue to do what he loved, but life kicked him in the mud again and forced him to cease teaching altogether. He was just 34 years old. But hey, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, doesn't it? But if you're a Christian, you could be outraged or even angry at the bold declaration Friedrich is famous for. God is dead. Let's talk about what he really meant. That remark comes from one of his first writings, named Thus Spoke Zarathustra. This is a philosophical story of a man called Zarathustra living in a fantasy time like ancient Rome. The story starts with Zarathustra completing 10 years all alone on top of a mountain, where he spent his time observing humans and the society they created. After 10 years, he has many thoughts to share, so he packs up his stuff and goes down the mountain to convey his message. He understands it will be a hard road, but nobody claimed the easy path is the right way. He reaches a village, and there he meets men of religion and men who have drifted away from religion. He travels through the packed market and finds a platform to stand on, hoping to grab everyone's attention. At first, few people notice him, but like a spreading fire, more and more people arrive. They wait to hear what he has to say. God is dead. The words sliced through the clamor like a hot knife through butter. The market went quiet. The crowd was shocked, incredulous, and even mad. A few folks gasped. The features twisted in fury and bewilderment. Others merely traded uncomfortable glances, unsure how to react to such a daring declaration. Some laughed uneasily and said Zarathustra was a nut, but some folks watched carefully. Their gazes were fastened on him with interest and wonder. There was something in his statements that rang true to them, something that echoed their own misgivings about the world. God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? All eyes on him, he began to explain. For those who have turned their backs on religion, God is dead, and we have slain him. We decided to sever the strings that tied us to God. We decided to challenge the old notions. Now we have the difficult task of finding new meaning and purpose in our lives without God. He stopped, then proceeded urgently. But do not despair. Use this as a chance to carve your own path, develop your own values, and be the CEO of your own life. And now, my friends, said Zarathustra, it is time for you to love the grandeur within you. Time to break free from what others want and carve your own path amid the chaos. The time has arrived for you to become an overman, a better, stronger kind of person. Now, if you happen to be doing a book report on this, don't just replicate what I stated. Those are not his exact words. That's how we understand them today. Friedrich's manner of speech was like an antique Roman historian. It made him seem so hip, so unlike all the boring philosophers. But it also made it almost impossible for the average individual to understand what he was saying. People had missed the point of his books too frequently. Such as the term God is dead really made religious people mad. And recall, most individuals in those days were religious people. This not only stopped him from being popular, it also made many think he was crazy, even his own friends and family. But that is just disrespectful. Friedrich had not gone mad yet, well, not then anyhow. One of the most astonishing aspects about Friedrich's life is that, even though his life was very bad, he remained positive and kept striving to make everyone else's life better. More and more people were turning away from their faith, or, as his character Zarathustra would put it, the empty nothingness of existence. Friedrich felt he had to guide these folks in the correct route. For hundreds, if not thousands, of years humans have been trained to believe there are only absolute rights and absolute wrongs. No compromise was made. To make matters worse, we were indoctrinated to believe uncritically what the church or a politician said. Well, just the thought of that gives us the goosebumps. People had to be taught how to live this new manner. So Friedrich made 7 proposals for becoming a overman. First, be yourself. Don't just be a slave to society. Find out who you really are. Second, grow more. Do hard things and face hurdles so you can become a better human. Third, live passionately. Try your best to follow your aspirations. A life lived passionately is worth far more than one lived idly. Fourth, embrace harsh times. If life is not treating you right, don't escape from the suffering. Let it make you stronger, tougher. 5, write your own rules. Friedrich notoriously criticized the church and governments for imposing their values on individuals. He added that you have to develop your own values from your own life and your own experiences. Real morality comes from within you, not from some other authority. Sixth, be you. Above all things, trust your own gut and intuition. In the end, you are your own best friend and you are your own worst adversary. Seventh, live the kind of life you'd like to live again and over again. What if you had to live your same life over and over and over for all eternity? Are you happy with that? So be yourself. Cherish every minute of life you have. What is so shocking about these 7 proposals is that they are coming from a place of real love and concern. Think of all the dreadful things that occurred to Friedrich. The average person who had been through it would despise everybody and curse the world for treating them so badly. But Friedrich channeled all that rage and revulsion into love and appreciation, as he had told others to do. Unfortunately, these solutions only work if people actually listen to them. And most people didn't want to hear from Friedrich. He was cast away from society. He wanted to get away from it all and relax, so he took a year off with 2 pals who were philosophers, a woman named Lou Andrea Salome and a man named Paul Ray. They rented a house together and began plotting to build their own little society of individuals just like them. But then love stepped in. Lou was loved by Paul and Friedrich. Both of them offered her too. They were refused, both of them. Friedrich felt he had discovered the love of his life and he would not let her go. He proposed 3 times in the end, and every time she denied. Paul and Friedrich's jealousy destroyed their ideal of a philosopher's utopia, and they had to leave their vacation early. Lou then said she was just there to test if people can live together without having sex. She basically stated she exploited Friedrich for her own studies. Oh, and she married some other dude regardless. Friedrich's heart was utterly broken. Broken more than ever. Everyone has a breaking point, a place where you can't take it anymore. For Friedrich, that moment came in 1889. He was only 44. The reality finally caught up with him and took him away. He was strolling along a street in Italy when he observed a man whipping a horse with a whip. Friedrich hurried to the animal, flung his arms round its neck protectively, and said, "I understand you, I understand you." Then he fell to the ground and all went black. Friedrich never got past that day. He would never be able to look after himself again for the rest of his life. People talked to him and he didn't answer. He was quite crazy. He was forced to live with his sister Elizabeth, who he couldn't really bear. And it grew worse when Elizabeth seized all of Friedrich's unfinished writings and twisted them to mean what she wanted. She turned everything he stood for upside down. Even more, he was misunderstood at the end of his life. A year later, Friedrich died and was buried close to his father in his hometown. But his narrative was not finished yet. Elizabeth kept conflating his work with her personal opinions, which were fascistic and anti-Jewish. The Nazis lauded Friedrich's work as a result. They interpreted his term, Overman, to mean that the pure German race was better than all others. Even a man named Adolf Hitler stated he adored Friedrich and came to visit Elizabeth in the same house where Friedrich had spent his dying years. The problem is, Friedrich detested Nazism and hated Jewish people. He liked to be different. He didn't like people instructing others how to live. So even though the Nazis claimed him as one of their own, he never belonged to them. After the Second World War, his name was cleared. And then throughout the Cold War, people began to like him and follow his teachings. In the world we live in today, where to be non-religious and individualistic is at its maximum point, which some people believe is wonderful and some say is bad, we almost completely live in the world that Friedrich tried to direct us towards, or perhaps warn us of. But 2 things for sure. First of all, Friedrich was much ahead of his time. And one more thing, like it or not, we are still human. And the crushing weight of actual existence is too much for any one person to carry alone. Or, as Friedrich might have said himself, whoever fights monsters should be careful lest he become a monster. And if you stare long enough into an abyss, the abyss will stare back into you.